Joining me now is Olivia Troye. She's the chief political strategist for the Renew America movement and served as senior advisor to Vice President Mike Pence. Olivia attended Thursday's January 6th hearing where the committee explained just how dangerous a situation Trump put his vice president in on that day. Olivia, great to see you this morning. What was it like for you attending this hearing on Thursday? Did you have a sense before or know before the hearing just how close that violent mob made it to Vice President Pence?
I had certainly been concerned in the lead up to January 6th that there was going to be violence, and I was very concerned as Trump began tweeting and really bringing the wrath to Mike Pence that his life would be in danger. But I never imagined that the mob would come within 40 feet of him. And when they said that, I was in the hearing. I had to tell you, Michael, I had to turn away from watching the footage. I looked away. I looked at Aquilino, Sergeant Goodell, and I looked over at Greg Jacob, who was sitting there realizing how close they came to threatening his own life as well, who also, he said he could hear the mob, he could hear the chants, but he had no idea that they had come that close. And it just goes to show the grave danger of that moment where the president of the United States put his own vice president in such danger. And I still, it's a thing that I know is real, but it is so hard to process to think that this happened in the United States.
Yeah, it is a stunning revelation to come to that truth about, your boss, your friend, your partner. You know the vice president very well. I know him. You know a lot better than I do. You worked very closely with him. What is the sense you think that he had? What was going through his head, about all of this and getting this information about this situation he was in and realizing I'm kind of out here on an island by myself?
Yeah, I think he was certainly stuck in this moment, and I think he's grateful that his family was there, although also their lives were in danger. Seeing those pictures of him and Charlotte Pence standing there while he looks at the video of the president when he finally calls the rioters off was just so striking and unbelievable. But I think going into it, Mike Pence knows Donald Trump. He knows what he's capable of. He's seen him bully people. So I don't know that he was surprised going into it that this is the wrath he would incur. I think that being his most loyal soldier, did he think this day would come? Probably not. But I certainly think he went into the situation knowing the risks and knowing the anger that was going to come his way. Now, do I think that he thought that the mob would be charged in his direction? Likely not. But I had certainly seen the chatter online. And as I watched sort of the rhetoric, look, I went into hiding for myself. I protected my own family because I knew what would be descending on the town of Washington, D.C. So we've seen what Donald Trump's words are capable of when it comes to galvanizing his supporters.
Yeah, we haven't heard a lot from the vice president in all of this, and he's going about his business, probably laying the grounds for a 2024 presidential run. As we've learned more details about this phone call between the president and the vice president, why hasn't he said anything? Why hasn't he come forward and been more public about that moment with the president and the moments on the Hill on January 6th?
Yeah, I think he's relying on people like Greg Jacob and Mark Short, who worked very closely with them, to tell the truth about the facts and everything that went on behind the scenes. So I don't think that he would have much more to share other than that conversation directly that he had with the president. I do know that Mike Pence takes executive privilege very, very seriously, and so that could be kind of part of it. But look, to be honest, I've been wanting Mike Pence. I've been wanting my former boss to come forward and speak publicly about this and address it. But I think you can't be half in and half out on the MAGA movement, right? And I think he's trying to balance both sides of the equation because he's looking at a 2024 presidential run. I think the better thing for the country would be to hear from Mike Pence directly, and maybe that would also impact this movement that continues to live on based on the lies of the stolen election. Because look, in the lead up to June, these June primaries, more than half of the governor's races across the country include an election denying candidate. And I say this to bring the point that this situation that developed inside the White House with Donald Trump and all these people who knew what they were trying to do was illegal, still is impacting our country today and will continue to impact possibly future elections to come. And that is a very serious thing for our country.
I couldn't agree with you more. Mike Pence, your voice is needed in this conversation. You know, country over MAGA. That's how this should work. Olivia Troye, former top aide to then Vice President Mike Pence, thank you as always for being a part of the program.